What's up? Welcome in. Happy Thursday to everybody. You're watching the San Francisco 49ers Report by Chat Sports. I'm Chase Sr. And coming up on today's show, I want to recap episode 1 of the new docuseries on Netflix called Receiver. If you don't know about it, here's a little background information on this new docuseries from Netflix. They followed around Deebo Samuel George Kittle, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Justin Jefferson, and Davante Adams for the entire duration of the 2023 season. And it gave us a fascinating all-access look behind the scenes from what transpired a year ago, and really just a cool look at the players' lives on and off the field. There are clips from games and practices at the facility, but also how they go about their daily lives in training, spending time with their family members and their friends, and you don't really get an all-access look at athletes in this manner all of the time. And if this sounds familiar, last year Netflix did a docuseries called Quarterback, where it featured Patrick Mahomes, Kirk Cousins, and Marcus Mariota. And there are really cool takeaways from episode number 1. How Netflix kind of did this: they heavily featured George Kittle, who is kind of the star of the show, Deebo Samuel, and Amon-Ra St. Brown for episode 1. Episode 2, more of a look at Davante Adams and Justin Jefferson. And then we circle back to Kittle and Deebo in episode 3. We kind of flip-flop. So I'm going to watch the entire series. While I'm only doing episode 1 here, I don't want to provide any spoilers for people who haven't watched past episode 1. But any takeaways that kind of come to mind or that stand out to me pertaining to Kittle and Deebo for the purpose of this show, we'll do some content here on the Niners Report. Couple of weeks to go until training camp. We're kind of in the doldrums of the NFL offseason, so a way for us to talk some Niners and, of course, provide some takeaways from this series. Did you or will you watch Receiver? If so, I want you to hit that thumbs up. I kind of like the video. I just want to gauge how many people are interested in this type of content. If not, I want you to comment why. If you're not watching because inevitably we know at the end of the year it's going to take a look at the Niners losing the Super Bowl, I totally get that, but let's dive in here. So the show gets underway with Peyton Manning, who was the narrator and the host of the Quarterback series, bringing us in. And then Randy Moss kind of takes over and says, look, I'm the receiver here. Peyton Manning, you step aside. So I thought that was a cool beginning to the show. And part 1 was titled Great Expectations. And we began the series with a scenic look at the iconic and legendary and historic Golden Gate Bridge. And you could tell right from the jump that George Kittle was going to be the star of this documentary. And it gave us some insight and a look at the man under the helmet, underneath the shoulder pads. And what's cool is that Deebo and Kittle have this intimate sit down with the makers and the producers of this docuseries, and they do some really cool interviews, so it leads to some cool sound bites. And George Kittle said, I want to be remembered as a player who gives it his all on every play. And he really carries himself in that way and plays with that energy. I thought it was cool how he provided context behind why George Kittle is who he is. And then also Deebo Samuel revealing why his nickname is Deebo. And he explained how he got that nickname when he was 5 or 6 years old. His father told him that he would always like to steal stuff as a kid, so he gave Deebo the nickname Deebo after the movie Friday because this character's name is Deebo. Very popular movie in the pop culture sphere. Deebo's original and actual name is Tyshawn Raekwon Deebo Samuel Sr., and then Deebo also explained how there were takeaways and there were assessments from his teammates from when he started to literally play harder and more physically. And he said his teammates said that once he had his son, he started to run through opponents and play with more physicality, and Deebo credited that to some dad strength. And then we kind of found out why Kyle Shanahan has this infatuation with Deebo and why he always tries to get him the football. Here's a direct quote from Kyle Shanahan explaining the uniqueness behind the player that is Deebo. Shanahan saying, quote, when he has the ball in his hands, he's pretty much different than everybody else. The speed he can hit like a receiver, the cuts he can make like a running back, but the kind of density in his body that's a lot closer to a linebacker, a fullback. So anytime you can get the ball in Deebo's hands, it is a problem for the defense. And that's why Deebo has emerged as one of the more unique playmakers really in the history of the NFL. We have not seen a lot of receivers who have this body type with the speed, the physicality, the cut, home run ability that Deebo possesses. And you think about how Kyle Shanahan tries to get him the ball, crossers in space, to allow him to pick up real estate while after catching the football, right? How he gives Deebo the football sometimes as a running back, on handoffs, jet sweeps, and bubble screens. You want to find creative ways to maximize his abilities and let his abilities shine. And maybe in the Super Bowl, Kyle Shanahan tried to force feed Deebo a little bit too much because from Kyle Shanahan's standpoint, he's thinking he's a home run threat anytime he gets his hands on the rock. And we can turn this game on its head in an instant by getting the football into Deebo's hands. And I think that Kyle Shanahan kind of forced the issue in trying to involve Deebo a little bit too much because all Kyle Shanahan knows is the special playmaker that Deebo is. But the Kansas City Chiefs knew that as well. And that's why they put an emphasis on utilizing press man coverage on Deebo, jamming him at the line of scrimmage. And Deebo kind of struggled to get going. He kind of missed that long ball from Brock Purdy as well, where he struggled to track the ball in the air. But either way, Deebo truly is one of one in this offseason. We have seen an extremely motivated player. I mentioned a little bit earlier how at the end of the documentary at some point we're going to see how George Kittle and Deebo Samuel react to losing the Super Bowl in heartbreaking fashion in overtime to Kansas City. Deebo talked about coming up short in episode 1, and it gave a look at the human nature side from an athlete's point of view of what happens when you suffer these soul-crushing losses. He talked about the 2019 Super Bowl during his rookie year when they lost to Kansas City, the 2021 NFC title game in which they lost that 10-point fourth quarter lead against the Los Angeles Rams, and then the heartbreak of the 2022 NFC title game when San Francisco lost to the Philadelphia Eagles, and they felt as though they had a great chance to win that game until Brock Purdy shredded his elbow, inevitably on this show, as I noted, Super Bowl 57. They're going to talk about that. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I don't have a lot of takeaways on Amon-Ra St. Brown or the other wide receivers, but him talking about all of the wide receivers who have been drafted before him, some see it as corny. Look, these athletes, they're like 1%ers, sometimes less than 1%ers. It's so hard to become a professional athlete. There's so much that goes into it, sacrifices, dedication, hard work. That's what drives Amon-Ra St. Brown is all of the wide receivers who were taken in front of him. And I think it's kind of cool how his ascent has coincided with the Detroit Lions' ascent as they have just come back from being an awful team for 3+ decades. They hadn't won a division title up until last year in 31 years. This is pretty cool. This is classic George Kittle. George Kittle's family and friends, whether it's on the road or in the Bay Area, always travel to games by way of a party bus. They're drinking beers. They're listening to music. I didn't even know there was a customized George Kittle rap song, but they were bumping to that. And I'm talking his wife, Claire Kittle, who is featured in this documentary, his parents, his friends. They're on the party bus. They're going hard. That is a fun crew that would be awesome to spend some time with. Those of you who watch the show, you know that sometimes I like to take down some beers during our watch parties. George Kittle, after the Cowboys game, shotgunning beers. I would love to shotgun a beer with George Kittle. George, if you're watching this, can we make it happen? I know that Brandon Ayuk watches this show because he liked my Instagram reel of me and Krug talking about the Savage Revenge Tour. George, if you're watching, need to shotgun a beer together? I challenge you. I can do it in less than 4 seconds. Can you? It would be an epic social media video. George Kittle on his wife, Claire Kittle, by the way, they have a really special relationship. He said, quote, "My wife is like my battery. She recharges me." Ladies and gentlemen, those are relationship goals right there. They met during both of their freshman years at Iowa. She was a hooper on the women's basketball team. George Kittle, of course, a tight end for the Iowa football team. And they were friends originally. They first met when Claire was either leaving a basketball practice or on her way to a basketball practice on like an electric scooter. She had to wear a helmet because basketball players have to out of safety. And George walked up to her and said, "Nice helmet." She said thanks, and then she just took off. Obviously, they then got married, and Kittle credits a lot of his success in his professional football career to her making sacrifices and her supporting him. When he wakes up every morning, he said that Claire says, quote, "Go kick some ass today." That would get me going. If my wife said that, again, relationship goals. Deebo mentioning last year that he noticed in the early portion of when the Niners team got together in training camp in the lead up to the season that he could feel that the vibes with this team were really special from the start. And they just had this level of confidence of how good they were. And they got off to that 5-0 start. There was a clip where Nick Bosa's like, "Deebo, we haven't had a team like this." And Deebo was like, "Look, I'm not trying to get ahead of things, but we're really damn good." And then Deebo's girlfriend, who is the mother to his son, who he named Deebo Jr., which is why he's rocking the number 1, and now on the nameplate we'll have Deebo Sr. She's in the press box after the Cowboys game when they dominated Dallas, and she said, "We're going to the Super Bowl. We're winning the Super Bowl." So the early indications, the Niners and then those people close to the Niners recognize that they had a really special team. I hope that can continue this year. You do have the awkwardness of the Brandon Ayuk situation, but look, in the previous few off seasons, we've seen Nick Bosa looking for a new deal, Deebo, Fred Warner, George Kittle. This is a team that still has a really special culture, and that's something that I noticed in being around this team in Las Vegas in the lead up to the Super Bowl. The leadership, the closeness of this team, the culture that the players credited Kyle Shanahan putting in place, I think that can carry over year to year. Niners Cowboys. Let's talk about that. What is the origin behind the F Dallas shirt that George Kittle wore when San Francisco throttled the Cowboys in prime time when he had 3 catches for 3 touchdowns? Here's what George Kittle had to say about wearing that F Dallas shirt. He got fined $15,000. He does not regret it at all. Kittle saying the Dallas game the week of, "I kept getting tagged in these photos of Gary Plummer, and I screenshotted that. I set it as my phone background. I said, let's reignite this rivalry just a little bit. The fine was $15,000, and I don't regret it one bit, not one bit, and I might do it again if given the opportunity." And then he kind of had this savage smile when he looked directly at the camera. Gary Plummer, a former Niner, who way back in the day when this rivalry between San Francisco and Dallas was at its peak, wore a same iteration of the shirt that George Kittle wore, the F Dallas shirt. So Kittle was sent that, and then he decided to do the same. And behind the scenes, some of the players on the Niners, especially in the tight end room, and Deebo knew that George Kittle was going to wear it. And then he goes off for 3 touchdowns. He's on the sideline, and he says, "Deebo, I lifted up the jersey. I showed the shirt." He said, "I'm definitely getting fined." So some cool stuff right there. Behind the origins of George Kittle wearing that F Dallas shirt, type F Dallas down in the comment section right now. Come on. As we look ahead, October 27th, Cowboys-Niners. As this rivalry continues, I also saw Jane Slater, who's a Cowboys reporter for the NFL Network. She did a Q&A here in the Dallas area, and she was featured on a golf magazine. And she was asked, which team do Cowboys fans hate the most? And she said, "I can't answer that as a reporter, but I would imagine the San Francisco 49ers." Cannot wait for October 27th. Cowboys, Niners, another installment of this rivalry. I will be back to recap episode 3 of Receiver. We'll break that down right here on the Niners Report. Be on the lookout for that. If you enjoyed today's show, you laughed, you were interested, it was riveting, type real one down below in the comment section. Thanks for watching, and be on the lookout for more content today and every day right here on the show.